Previously, on Secrets, Crimes, and Audiotape.
Guys, look at this. Our killer may have left a calling card.
You hear that, Louis? The new tenant in 4A.
Tap dancing. The following week, I managed to pretend I was lost on the stairs, so Ellie rescued me and George invited her in for coffee.
Ellie! Ellie, are you all right?
I met Cassie Moby on West End Avenue. She told me that Mrs. Chase has been murdered and that police are looking for me.
They found your ID card next to the body.
From Wondery, this is Secrets, Crimes, and Audiotape. I'm your host, David Reinstrom. What's your secret? My secret is that I have no alibi. But you wouldn't tell on little old me, would you? We return to Upper West Blues, our jazzy tale of murder and intrigue on New York City's Upper West Side. But first, the Tripod campaign. All this month, we're encouraging you to share a podcast with someone you love. Recommend one to them. You can even do that while you're listening. Your smartphone's podcasting application has a share feature. If you love Secrets, Crimes, and Audiotape, you can text the download URL of this episode right to a friend. A lot of people don't know that most podcasts are free. Now, Upper West Blues. Mrs. Chase, a retired tenant in a cosmopolitan apartment building, has been murdered. The only information the police have leads them directly to Ellie, the beautiful Polish dancer who lives above Louis, our feline detective, and his owner George. This is part 2 of Upper West Blues, so if you want to acquaint yourself with the facts of the case and get to know the eclectic, backstabbing building mates in our story, hop on back to part 1 in your podcast feed. If you're all caught up, follow me. Let's rejoin Louis, George, and the well-meaning Ellie, whose alibi appears flimsy at best.
My name's Louis. I'm black, handsome, sleek, a cat with a mission. I live in an apartment building on the Upper West Side of Manhattan with my owner George, a cognitive neuroscientist. When the old lady in the apartment upstairs was murdered, George and I were hot on the trail of the killer. Next morning, bright and early, I was returning from a nocturnal stroll around the neighborhood when I spotted Ellie. She was tiptoeing out of 3B, heading for the stairs.
Louis, shush.
Ellie, where are you going?
I just need to get some things from my apartment.
What if someone sees you?
You're right. I'm sorry. I will stay in 3B.
No, come in here. You too, Louis.
Oh, what is the music?
Scott Joplin, American Ragtime. Gets my neurons firing in the morning.
Neurons?
The basic units of the brain. Every time we sense something, or move, or decide to move, our neurons are firing.
Remarkable.
Neurons are incredible. Did you know that our brain has about 1,000 billion of them?
Really, I had no idea. Maybe if I wear your coat and hat, I can sneak upstairs now?
Ellie, better stay here. What would you like for breakfast?
Oh, I never eat breakfast.
You gotta eat breakfast. It's good for your metabolism.
My metabolism? Really?
Eventually, George persuaded Ellie to have coffee, toast, muesli, and 2 poached eggs. But whenever he tried to get her to talk about the hermit...
Why do you think he did it?
I just do.
You said you knew things about him.
I hear him sometimes, going down the stairs.
I've never seen him. Have you actually seen him?
What made you choose the brain?
Choose the brain?
To specialize. Why not plastic surgery? There is more money in facelifts, no?
Yes, I guess there is.
For the next 2 days, we were never happier. George spent more time at home cooking up a storm. Ellie practiced her dancing next door. Needless to say, it was too good to last.
Yes, Detective Miller. I need to talk to you, Professor. Something smells good.
Beef stroganoff. What can I do for you?
Shouldn't you be at your lab?
I'm going in later.
You've been spending more time at home than usual, haven't you, Professor?
Have I?
I'm surprised you can concentrate with such exuberant neighbors.
How's the investigation, Detective?
We've just tracked down a key suspect.
Congratulations.
I assume you're familiar with the legal concept of aiding and abetting a suspect to a crime?
I am now.
Don't worry, Professor. We just need to have a formal chat with her.
George has nothing to do with this.
Ellie Krajewski, I presume.
Krajewski.
Don't say a word, Ellie. Not until I've found you a lawyer.
You've been watching too many movies, Professor. We'd like you to come down to headquarters, Miss Krajewski, and answer a few questions.
Of course. Goodbye, you good man. Goodbye, little cat. Goodbye.
I slipped out and watched as Ellie got into the police car. When I looked up at her building, I saw 3 heads gazing out of 3 different windows. Tomaz the Brazilian in a low-cut beaded gown, Haruki the Japanese musician holding his bassoon like a sword, and high up just under the roof, a rare glimpse of an unfamiliar silhouette, the hermit. It was time to investigate what the tenants were up to. Fortunately, George was restless, so it wasn't hard to induce him to follow me up to the top floor.
Louis, come back here. Get away from Haruki's door. He's practicing. Keep it down, Louis. Dr. Loeb is busy with a patient.
I'm 35 years old. I do not wear nylon. So then she acts wounded, like I've rejected her.
Now where are you going?
Very well, my nose.
Not the sparrows. We'll be there for hours. I don't like you wandering around the building while there's a murderer still at large. Oh, apartment 7B? Louis, believe me, the man in 7B has no interest in meeting you. The last time he met anyone new was probably 1975. But I know what Ellie said, but I can't simply knock on the man's door. Stop clawing the mat. It's antisocial.
May I help you?
The Russian businessman in 7A. Middle height, thinning hair, expensive suit.
Hi, sorry. Just retrieving Louis.
Black cat. Intelligent animal.
Let's say he has a mind of his own.
I am Boris.
George.
Please, come inside.
No, really, we shouldn't be up here.
Nonsense. You're legal resident. I am legal resident. You must come in. I have something to tell. Please, sit.
This place was the opposite of our apartment. Even the antique furniture looked new. A plasma screen television along one entire wall. No books.
Vodka?
No, thank you.
Herring, cheese, crackers.
The herring looked delicious.
No, thank you.
Please, it is honor to have you here. Vodka.
Okay, just the one.
Not like that. Watch.
Cheers. You said you had something to tell me.
Nostrovia.
Sorry?
Your health.
Nostrovia.
This neighborhood. What do they call it?
The Upper West Side.
Yeah, Upper West Side. You think it will rise in value, yes?
Value?
Property value.
Oh, property. Well, property is going through the roof everywhere in New York.
But here, Upper West Side, prices will rise?
Definitely. Mind you, my students, once they graduate, they can't afford to live in Manhattan anymore.
Nostrovia. To property.
Strovia. It's not such a good thing, you know, when property becomes too expensive for ordinary people.
You're communist.
Not at all. I just think it would be better for everyone if...
In my country, you must drink.
We are not in your country. We're in America.
Nostrovia Americovia. Drink.
Nostrovia Americovia. You said you had something to tell me.
Murder of old lady. I know who did it.
Who?
Menacross Hall.
The hermit.
Hermit, yes. I saw him. Drink.
Cheers. Last one, okay? When did you see him?
Many times I see him creeping downstairs.
Really? Nobody has seen him in years.
You do not believe me?
Are you sure it was the hermit?
The day old lady died, I see him coming out of her apartment. He does not see me.
Finally, I saw the same thing.
Have you told the police?
In my country, we tell police nothing.
We are not in your crumbly, your cummery, your... Oh.
That's when George collapsed. The Russian made him comfortable on the leather sofa.
Poor man. You need rest.
Meanwhile, I was having a sniff around. That's when I smelled it. The familiar smell. I couldn't quite place it. No, wait a sec. Flowers? Lemon?
You cat!
Come here, kid.
Uh-oh.
Come here, you damn kid.
I looked for George. He was still out cold.
Too many damn kids in world.
I clambered over George and leapt onto a glass shelf cluttered with Fabergé eggs. This did not endear me to Boris.
Time for you to say bye-bye, Upper West Side.
He had me by the throat. Then he turned, and I saw the open window.
Bye-bye, life.
What does a cat think about when it's sent flying out of a 7-story apartment building onto a city pavement? I could tell you what this cat was thinking. Gratitude for the good times with George. Regret that it was all over so soon. I'd always seen myself as Humphrey Bogart, the guy in the trench coat who'd be there in the last reel. Turns out, I was one of those stupid mugs who has to die mid-movie. A dispensable minor player. Well, like they say in old Hollywood, those are the breaks. Well, I've just been sent flying out of a 7th-floor window by Boris Mishkin. I went flying through the air and landed on a cloud. I looked down. A 1930s Art Deco movie set. Marble alabaster pillars. A moving escalator 90 floors high. I hopped on. At the top was God.
Hello, Louis.
God sounded like Detective Miller from the New York Homicide Division. He looked like God. Am I in cat heaven?
Obviously. According to our records, you were defenestrated by a Russian dipsomaniac at approximately 6:45 p.m. in Manhattan, New York, USA.
So, I'm dead?
Not definitively. That was your first life. You have 8 lives to go.
Wow. So that old saying about cats having 9 lives.
Entirely true.
Why 9?
What?
Why only 9 lives?
Don't push your luck.
Sorry. Are you aware that your existence directly refutes the materialistic assertions of most world-class neuroscientists?
I forgive them. Any preference for where you'd like to spend your second life?
I'd like to go home to George. We still haven't solved the murder of Old Lady Chase.
Right then. Careful of open windows. Off you go.
I ambled through the door to find George stretched out on the couch. Dr. Loeb was bending over him with a bowl of chicken soup.
Trust me, this will do the trick.
Dr. Lowe, what are you doing here?
I found you dancing outside my door. You were singing Archichernia,
What?
a Russian folk song. It means dark eyes.
Russian. The Russian. On the top floor.
Is seldom home. Ugh, the cat is back.
Louis, you're alive. Haruki saw you falling through the air.
Mr. Haruki is hardly a reliable witness.
Look, I know you think Haruki is the murderer.
Haruki or Tomas the Brazilian, those are my 2 key suspects.
What about the hermit?
Who?
The man nobody knows. Up in 7B, he's always been mysterious.
Definitely not.
How do you know?
I just know. Finish your chicken soup. Your cat may need Valium.
As soon as we got rid of Dr. Loeb, we headed for the police station where they were holding Ellie. She's the Polish dancer in 4A. Her ID card was found right next to the body. I know, highly suspicious. But Ellie is incredibly innocent. George took me along in my basket. We had an appointment at the vet's to make sure I was okay after my recent free fall. But just as we were leaving the apartment...
Professor Imison.
Haruki. Hello.
I have had a dream.
Yes?
The married couple, British, they came to me in my dream. They had blood on their hands.
The sparrows?
Attack with candlestick takes 2 people, no?
What's the motive?
Crime and punishment.
What?
Dostoevsky, myth of the Superman. Kill because you can, because you are superior.
Philip and Sally Sparrow?
Intellectuals, tortured minds, superior hearts, not to mention British imperialism.
You gotta excuse me, Haruki. Urgent appointment.
I'd never been to a police station before. It smells of coffee and disinfectant. Everyone is in a hurry. After a long wait, they let us see Ellie.
Oh, you have brought Louis. Hello, handsome Louis.
Ellie, Are you okay?
I am fine, George.
Have they forced you to sign a statement?
I told the truth. How I was supposed to be mystery shopping at the time of Mrs. Chase's murder, but I went for a walk in Central Park instead.
But they're still detaining you.
They think because I am foreign, I must be criminal.
Ellie, you said you could tell me things about the hermit.
I think he knew Mrs. Chase.
That's what Boris said.
Boris?
The Russian in apartment 7A.
You have spoken to the Russian?
He saw the hermit coming out of Mrs. Chase's apartment on the day of the murder.
The Russian told you that?
He's convinced the hermit did it.
The Russian. Tell him you saw me. Tell him that Ellie is grateful for his help.
I'm not sure the Russian will help you.
Why not?
He's like you. He doesn't trust the police.
But this is my only hope. If someone saw Hermit...
I'll speak to Detective Miller. He can compel the Russian to testify what he knows.
No, they mustn't compel him. That will make the Russian angry.
Ellie, you're being accused of murder.
It's not fair, is it, Louis? All I want to do is dance.
She looked over at me with those big blue, tear-stained eyes and those beautifully sculpted Slavic cheekbones, and I vowed then and there that I would do anything. And I mean anything.
Get the damn cat out of here.
Sorry, Detective. He had a fall. I'm taking him to the vet.
What are you doing here, Imeson?
I think you should re-interview the Russian in 7A and the hermit in 7B.
Why?
The hermit had some sort of relationship with old Mrs. Chase.
Hermits don't have relationships.
He was seen emerging from her apartment on the afternoon of the murder.
Who by?
Talk to the Russian in 7A before there's another murder.
Okay, thank you. Now your time is up here.
Why are you still holding Ellie?
We need to check her immigration status.
It's fine, George. You go.
I'll be back tomorrow. Come on, Louis.
As we were leaving the station, Detective Miller came running after us.
Professor Imeson, just one more thing.
Yes?
Mrs. Chase didn't die from a blow to the head.
No?
She was poisoned. A lethal dose of strychnine. The bash on the side of the head with the candlestick? That was just for show.
While the vet checked me for breaks or sprains, she and George chatted about strychnine. Apparently, it's one of the most common homicidal poisons, extremely bitter in taste. Poisoners tend to disguise it in brandy, coffee, hot chocolate, or jam. When we got home, we found Tomas from apartment 2B outside our door.
Georgie, 1 minute of your time, please.
Of course.
Have you heard the latest? The strychnine.
I've heard.
Well, it's obvious who done it. Casimovi.
Impossible. She was at the hospital all day.
Exactly. She's a nurse, right? Who knows about poisons?
Thanks to the internet, millions of people.
Take it from me, honey. Casimovi is your poisoner.
We were settling down to dinner when Casimobi dropped by.
Oh, dinner time. I come back later.
No, please. Come in, Casimobi. So, what's your theory?
How do you know I have a theory?
Don't you?
I don't need a theory. I know who did it.
Who?
Dr. Loeb.
Dr. Loeb. Why?
The figure in black and white in the foreground is always bright red when she steps into the shadows.
Is that a Nigerian proverb?
Agatha Christie, Dorothy L. Sayers, P.D. James. I am an avid reader of detective fiction. Who is the least likely of all the suspects? Dr. Loeb. That means Dr. Loeb must be guilty.
It was Dr. Loeb, an urgent summons to her apartment.
Please, in here. There's someone you need to meet.
Dr. Loeb was so excited she didn't notice me trailing in after George. Her consulting room was kind of classic. If you've been to the Freud Museum in London or the one in Vienna, you'll know what I mean. Chaise lounge, chair, desk, carpet, homey and austere. Exactly like Loeb.
Professor Imeson, this is Mr. Bartleby.
Bartleby was sitting at attention on the sofa. He was the palest, thinnest man you've ever seen. He held himself with a stillness most humans can't manage.
I needn't tell you who he is.
Mr. Bartleby, you live in apartment 7B.
That is correct.
But we seldom see you.
Never, if I can help it.
Mr. Bartleby has something to tell you.
I'm listening.
Why are you persecuting me?
I'm not.
I hear you outside my door.
Only once. I wanted to speak to you.
You think I killed Mrs. Chase?
Not me, but there are one or two others.
Mr. Bartleby and Mrs. Chase were old acquaintances.
Yeah, our sisters were friends.
When Mr. Bartleby was at art school in the 1960s, Mrs. Chase told him about the apartment on the top floor.
$8 a week in those days.
Incredible.
I need very little. I go for walks. I'm a walker in the city.
The rhythm of Mr. Bartleby's life runs deliberately counter to the rhythms of the city.
When New York sleeps, I walk. When New York walks, I sleep.
Good way to beat the crowds.
I don't have a phone or a television. Why are you persecuting me?
You were observed emerging from Mrs. Chase's apartment on the day of the murder.
I had a message.
A message?
A letter from Mrs. Chase, pushed under my door. She needed to see me.
When you saw Mrs. Chase, was she all right?
She was very old, disgruntled. She said I'd been ignoring her. I've been ignoring everyone.
What time was this?
I don't have a watch.
You had an argument?
No argument. I can't bear people.
It's all right, Mr. Bartleby.
Do you have the letter?
Threw it away. I threw everything away.
But you're certain the letter was from Mrs. Chase?
I have no idea. No one ever writes to me. Oh, the cat.
He won't bite you. He's mine.
Yours? He's mine. I give him sardines, don't I, Balthazar?
Louis. His name is Louis. He hates sardines.
Oh, okay, now you know. And now George knows. I like a good sardine. And in spite of what the hermit says, he's desperate for company, so occasionally I go up there, have a nosh, lie around, listening to the silence, which gives the lie to those myths you may have heard about cats, that we're selfish, calculating egomaniacs. Well, maybe we are, but not all the time.
I didn't kill Mrs. Chase. Why would I? There's nothing I want, nothing I need. Do you believe me?
Whether I believe you is irrelevant. Do you have an alibi?
I am Mr. Bartleby's alibi.
You?
He has been consulting me professionally. At the time of the murder, Mr. Bartleby was here with me in this very room.
I see. Thanks. Good to meet you. Come on, Balthazar.
So, even our little Louis leads a double life as Balthazar. Now, all of this is awfully suspicious. That Boris fellow seems, evil, to put it mildly. Meanwhile, all the rest of the tenants suspect one another. I'm anxious for Louis to wrap this case up before someone else gets murdered. Stay tuned for scenes from the next episode of Upper West Blues, followed by more of my conversation with playwright Marcy Cahan, right here on Secrets, Crimes, and Audiotape.
You actually spoke to Hermit?
He has an excellent alibi. He was with Dr. Loeb.
They are lying.
Who benefits from the death of old Lady Chase?
I don't understand.
You were set up. The killer knew you ran errands for Mrs. Chase. Whoever killed Mrs. Chase must have spiked her groceries.
Casimobi or Dr. Loeb or the Sparrows might have offered her a neighborly hot chocolate.
Boris or the Hermit could have forced brandy laced with strychnine down her throat.
And there was Ellie.
I am good neighbor. Tea, milk, jam?
Tea, milk, jam.
Now, I had the great privilege to talk to Marcy Cahan, the enterprising mind behind this story. Marcy's been working in audio fiction for several decades. I asked her about some of the adaptations she's done. When you adapt a work for the ear, how do you approach it? How do you build sound texture into something as internal as a novel?
Okay, what you do is you adapt it in the way that you would be adapting something for the stage or for... But as you're working on the scene, you have to begin thinking in sound. And it's helpful that in the format for a radio drama, you've got, the setup, which is like the setup for a film. Interior, the Rostov drawing room day. But then you have FX, you have sound effects. That's always part of the formatting, in between the dialogue. Mm-hmm. So you're thinking about what the people in the Rostov drawing room are hearing and what would be the most evocative sound. And in general, when you begin writing radio drama, you put in too much. So you have rain and a dog barking and a window opening, and it gets very, very cluttered. And then as you listen to radio drama and get your stuff into the studio, you realize that as with anything and any art, less is more. And what you're looking for is absolutely the right sound or the right piece of music or the right silence for that moment. So you're choreographing the dialogue, the sounds, the silences, it's like composing a piece of music. That's probably the closest thing it corresponds to.
In my research, I turned up the fact that you went to high school with, you are still friends with cognitive neuroscientist and evolutionary psychologist Steven Pinker. I saw this joint presentation that the two of you gave in 2007. Yes. Is George based on him or anyone in particular?
Loeb is a Freudian. I used to think Freudian meant someone from the country of Freud, like Peruvian. But it turns out Freudian means someone who thinks that human beings spend most of their time concealing their essential nature from themselves and each other, unlike cats.
George Pinker has been a good friend since we were 12 years old, and so the character of George, it was a kind of private joke. That sometimes one writes those in for one's friends, just a line or an aspect of a play that only certain people get, and it doesn't shut out the rest of the audience. But yes, I would have to admit that George was inspired by Steven Pinker.
I always enjoy a debate with a dogmatic Freudian before bedtime.
Like Steven, George is a very affable, likable, articulate person.
Do you work from home as a writer?
I work all over the place. There's a wonderful private library in the middle of town called the London Library. And it was founded in the 19th century. I think it's just celebrating its 175th anniversary. And it has wonderful facilities for writers. So I've done a lot of work there.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah, it is. It's fabulous. The British Museum, the British Library has opened a fantastic new branch not very far from me. And that's also another place where I can, get out of the flat and clear my head. Of a big apartment building, there are 13 flats in this building. It is that what we all have in common is that we all live and work in central London. But when we close our doors, we're all in our separate worlds with our different objectives and ambitions, desires, passions, secrets. So that's really what I wanted to explore.
I have had a dream.
Yes?
The married couple, British, they came to me in my dream. They had blood on their hands.
The Sparrows?
And if you need a list of suspects in the classic detective fiction, they can't be too similar.
Mr. Haruki is hardly a reliable witness.
Look, I know you think Haruki is the murderer.
Haruki or Tomas the Brazilian, those are my two key suspects.
So it was a way of getting that diversity, but yet, like having Murder on the Orient Express or murder on a boat going up the Nile, the apartment building is an enclosed world.
So you were telling me earlier, this piece is adapted from a BBC World Service production you did in 2008, and it was originally called Nostrovia Fitzrovia. And so I don't really know much about the London neighborhood of Fitzrovia. I gather it is very similar to the Upper West Side or Greenwich Village in New York.
I've lived in Fitzrovia for 24 years, and it's similar, in some ways it's similar to the Village. In terms of location, it's north of Soho, it's south of Regent's Park, it's just west of Bloomsbury, where the University of London is, and it's east of a more fashionable, richer kind of Upper East Side neighborhood called Marylebone. And in the past 10 years, Fitzrovia has got very, very fashionable, and property prices have just exploded. And there are luxury developments being built all over central London at the moment. Of course, it's a big problem.
Upper West Side. You think it will rise in value, yes?
Value?
Property value.
Oh, property. Well, property is going through the roof everywhere in New York.
Because people who renting here are being pushed out.
My students, once they graduate, they can't afford to live in Manhattan anymore.
And in a way, that's what the play is about.
So everyone in the apartment building comes to George for advice or to offer suspicions because they like him.
Everyone likes George, so they cleared a space for him to look in at the crime scene.
Have you historically been that person in a group of friends where people are always saying, like, Marcy, I need your advice on thing X, and you feel like piled on upon, or is that Where does that come from with George?
With George, yeah, I think I probably am one of those. I'm one of those people. I guess my persona is the little professor. So people do ask me what I think, and I find it incredibly flattering. And, I have to stop myself from pretending to be an expert on things about which I know nothing. Now, I think with our access to all human knowledge on the internet, we probably have a wider superficial knowledge of a lot more things than we did when, if you want to know about the French Revolution, you'd have to go to a library and find the history section and do a lot of reading. And now it's much easier to delude ourselves that we're well informed, thanks to Wikipedia.
So neither Detective Miller nor Dr. Loeb have any particular fondness for poor little Louie.
No.
If a person doesn't like cats on principle, what does that suggest to you about their character?
That they prefer dogs. I don't have any deep psychological analysis.
Ugh, the cat is back.
There are many people who have a horror of cats because of allergies. There might be, I have friends who have had an encounter with a cat who jumped on them one time and startled them and, might have even caused them to fracture something. And as a result, whenever they're within half a mile of a cat, they panic. So it's, the great thing about cats, as Rudyard Kipling told us, is that they walk by themselves, and they're not entirely predictable.
That's when I felt it was time for me to speak up, shed some light on the mystery.
Who let that damn cat in here?
A cat's objective is to be comfortable on its own terms. A dog's objective is to secure the approbation and the attention of its owner.
Hey, that's all the time we've got left for this episode, Secret Keepers. If you haven't done it yet, subscribe now on iTunes, Stitcher, the Wondery app on Android, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find a link to subscribe to Secrets, Crimes, and Audiotape, and more information on the episode notes. Simply tap or swipe over the cover art. You will also see how to follow us and some offers from our sponsors. Please support our show by supporting them. We'd love to hear from you. Please complete a small survey at Wondery.com/survey. And won't you please, pretty please, rate and review us on iTunes. And be sure to tell your friends and show them how to subscribe. Upper West Blues was written by Marcy Cahan. In Upper West Blues, Louie was played by Steven Weber. George was played by Josh Stamberg. Ellie was played by Moira Quirk. Detective Miller, Boris, and God in this episode were played by Andre Soliozzo. Dr. Loeb was played by Susan Sullivan. Kasimobi was played by Inger Tudor. Haruki and Tomaz were played by Matt Wolf. The Hermit, aka Bartleby, was played by Jim Meskimen. Sally Sparrow was played by Rosalind Ayres, and Philip Sparrow by Martin Jarvis. It was directed by Martin Jarvis for Jarvis and Ayres Productions. Upper West Blues was recorded, designed, and mixed by Mark Holden for the Invisible Studios, West Hollywood. Thank you for listening to Secrets, Crimes, and Audiotape. The theme song for our series was composed by Mark Hadley. Our editor is Sergio Enriquez. Our executive producers are Jeffrey Glazer and Hernan Lopez for Wondery. Until next time, I'm your host, David Reinstrom. What's your secret?